You know, Usually when we look at power dynamics, especially on a massive like imperial scale,
hmm
there's this widespread expectation of precision.
Right, like everything is calculated.
Exactly. Like if you want to understand how a structure stands, you look at the engineering.
Yeah.
You identify the load-bearing pillars, you calculate the weight distribution, and the math gives you a clear answer.
It's very quantifiable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you apply that to a medical diagnosis, it's sort of the same thing. You break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line fracturing the bone, and the doctor just points at the film and says, there it is. You fix the break, and the arm heals.
I mean, it's a binary way of viewing the universe,
Yeah.
right? Broken or unbroken, yielding or resisting. It offers a very clean, understandable narrative.
And it is incredibly comforting to view the world that way.
Hmm.
If you are a listener navigating, say, massive corporate structures today or trying to understand global politics, you naturally want to find the x-ray.
Of course you do. You want to see the clear lines of authority.
Right. But when you step into the world of human nature, and specifically into the narrative we are plunging into today, you find out very quickly that the x-ray machine itself is fundamentally broken.
Oh, yeah. Completely shattered.
You are staring at a diagnostic landscape of power and resistance that completely defies simple categorizations.
You are operating in diagnostic muddy waters. The clear lines of compliance and rebellion just blur together.
And that's dangerous, isn't it?
It's incredibly dangerous. What's truly dangerous for those in power is that this murkiness is exactly the environment where rigid, monolithic structures begin to fracture. When an empire relies entirely on binary outcomes, it entirely loses the vocabulary required to process a nuanced threat.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because setting the scene for you today is absolutely crucial.
It really is the foundation of the whole thing.
Yeah, for this deep dive, we have compiled an extensive array of sources covering an epic science fiction narrative. It's titled The Defiance of Earth, The Emperor's Ruin.
Such a fascinating text.
Truly. And our mission today is to take apart a premise that sounds, honestly on its face, like a complete paradox. We are going to examine how a seemingly insignificant, perfectly peaceful human settlement managed to entirely dismantle a 50,000-year-old galactic empire.
50,000 years. I just want to pause on that time span for a second.
That's hard to even wrap your head around.
It is, because to understand the fall of this empire, you have to understand the sheer weight of its history. 50,000 years represents roughly 2,000 human generations.
Wow, 2,000.
Yeah. If an empire has ruled for that long, it has fundamentally altered the institutional psychology of its ruling class. The emperor and the vast bureaucracy beneath him haven't just forgotten what true opposition looks like.
They've completely erased it.
Exactly. They have excised the very concept of defiance from their cultural reality. It just doesn't exist for them anymore.
So, paint that picture for us then. What does a galaxy actually look like when opposition has been extinct for 2,000 generations?
Well, it looks like an ecosystem of absolute stagnation, but it's disguised as perfect order.
Like a really well-kept lawn where nothing new is allowed to grow.
That's a great way to put it. The Galactic Empire is the unquestioned hegemon into this rigid, hierarchical caste system.
And I'm guessing everyone is just funneling resources to the top.
Oh, absolutely. Millions of worlds are paying tribute, sending resources back to a single central throne world. And all of this is held together by an overwhelming military apparatus.
We're talking massive fleets, right?
Fleets of warships so large they literally have their own gravitational pull. But the true glue holding it all together isn't the ships.
What is it then?
It's the sheer terror. The
What?
suffocating weight of inevitability. The alien emperor expects absolute compliance because, functionally, compliance is the only physical law his ancestors have observed for 50 millennia.
So it's like gravity to him. If you drop an apple, it falls to the floor. If you demand the planet, it bows.
Exactly. To the emperor, both of those things are just natural laws of the universe.
Which is the perfect entry point to talk about a world called Earth Colony 117.
The catalyst for everything.
The catalyst. Now, if you are listening to this and expecting the Empire to have targeted some heavily fortified military stronghold to start this war, you are going to be disappointed.
Deeply disappointed.
Because Colony 117 has absolutely zero strategic value. It is this quiet, peaceful frontier settlement situated near the very edge of imperial space.
It's mostly farmers, right?
Yeah, exactly. A population of farmers, agricultural engineers, some scientists studying local flora, and just families trying to build a quiet life. There are no orbital defense cannons. There are no military bases.
It is the absolute antithesis of a threat. which makes the Empire's initial action all the more illuminating regarding their mindset.
Right. So one morning, out of nowhere, an Imperial fleet of 500 heavily armed warships drops out of hyperspace right above the colony.
500 ships. A farming colony.
Overkill doesn't even begin to cover it. And there is no diplomatic hail. There is no negotiation. The Imperial commander just broadcasts a single, incredibly blunt decree.
Do we have the quote?
We do.
Yeah?
He says, "By decree of the Emperor, this world now belongs to the Empire."
Just like that.
Just like that. The human colonists are completely blindsided. Their planetary governor responds by stating the obvious, saying, "We've done nothing wrong. We are a peaceful settlement."
A completely rational response.
Right. But the Imperial commander doesn't cite a security threat or a border dispute. He just shrugs and delivers this chilling response. The Emperor desires this system.
What's fascinating here is the linguistic choice. Desires.
Yeah, it's so casual.
It really is. It is an assertion of power driven purely by whim. When a system of government operates unchallenged for that long, it no longer needs to manufacture justifications for its violence.
They don't need a false flag operation. They just want it.
Exactly. The entitlement of absolute power means that the emperor's passing thought carries the weight of a death sentence for millions.
So the human governor refuses the order to surrender. He doesn't have an army, but he refuses on principle. And the Empire's response is immediate.
I don't hesitate.
Not for a second.
Wow.
Within hours, those 500 warships open fire. It's an orbital bombardment. The sky turns to fire, entire agricultural cities are vaporized, and thousands of civilians die in an afternoon.
It's a massacre.
A total massacre. But before the communication arrays are completely destroyed, the colony manages to send a data packet back to Earth, detailing exactly what just happened.
And this is where the emperor makes his first critical miscalculation.
He thinks it's just another Tuesday.
He really does. He sits back on his throne light years away, and he just waits. He expects the inevitable. He expects Earth's government to immediately transmit a formal, unconditional surrender.
Maybe accompanied by pleas for mercy.
Yeah. Or offers of tribute to spare the rest of their colonies, because that is what thousands of other species have done.
But 3 weeks pass. 3 entire weeks of absolute radio silence from Earth.
Which is unheard of.
Completely. And you have to imagine the unease that might have caused in the lower ranks of the imperial bureaucracy. Like, why aren't they begging?
Right, the officers are probably getting nervous.
But the Emperor just waits. Finally, a single transmission arrives from Earth. And it's not a lengthy diplomatic treaty. It's not a list of concessions.
It's so brief.
It is exactly 1 sentence long, just 4 words. You attacked our people.
I want to really analyze the psychological weight of that specific sentence. You attacked our people. Notice what is missing from that transmission.
There's no demand for compensation.
None. There is no threat of retaliation either. There is no bluster or posturing or begging.
It's not a negotiation at all.
Not even slightly. It is a statement of objective fact. To a tyrant, power is loud. It's theatrical. The Empire arrived with 500 warships and fiery decrees.
And humanity responded with this terrifying minimalist silence.
Yes. And the Emperor fundamentally misreads this. To an egomaniac, silence implies fear.
He assumes they're just cowering.
Exactly. But this wasn't fear. It was a legal indictment being read to a condemned system. The judgment had already been made by humanity. The execution just hadn't commenced yet.
I love how you phrase that. But the Emperor actually laughs when he reads it. He looks at his advisors. He looks at the telemetry showing his millions of warships, and he just laughs at the audacity of this tiny species.
He completely dismisses them.
He casually issues another order to his commanders. Take 10 more colonies.
He treats it like a minor administrative annoyance, like clearing brush.
Right. But I want to explore the mechanics of this from humanity's side, though, because I read that single-sentence response, and part of me thinks, why wouldn't they at least try to stall?
That's a fair question.
Like, why not send diplomats to buy time? Why not navigate the bureaucracy like every other species had done for 50,000 years to minimize the bloodshed?
That is a highly logical question if you are operating under standard survival metrics.
Right. Just trying to survive the day.
But it ignores the profound cultural history of humanity outlined in the source texts. Humanity, unlike many of the alien species conquered by the Empire, has a deeply scarred historical record.
We've been through it.
We really have. We are a species that fought countless wars on our own planet. We survived global conflicts, near-extinction events, and tyrannical regimes of our own making.
So we have institutional memory. We know how this plays out.
Exactly. We know what appeasing a tyrant looks like. Our history is littered with treaties signed with dictators that only resulted in slower, more painful subjugation.
Buying time just means buying chains.
Precisely. The human leadership looked at the unprovoked vaporizing of Colony 117 and instantly recognized the existential nature of the threat. You cannot negotiate with a wildfire.
Or debate a tsunami.
Exactly. The Emperor wasn't a political opponent, he was an extinction-level event. So they didn't waste time talking. They spent those 3 weeks of silence preparing.
Which catapults us directly into the art of the unpredictable. So the Emperor sends his next fleets to take those 10 colonies. He sends 500 ships, and they vanish.
Vanish is the exact right word. They just disappear.
But wait, let's get into the weeds here. How does a fleet of 500 massive interstellar warships just vanish? The text says there was no debris field found, no distress signals.
Nothing. A complete blackout.
I mean, I understand space is vast, but these ships have massive engine signatures, they leave thermal trails, they have constant telemetry linking back to the Imperial capital.
They do. And if we connect this to the bigger picture of imperial military doctrine, the disappearance is a statistical impossibility.
It shouldn't be able to happen.
Right. The Empire relies on overwhelming force and highly predictable, rigid logistics. They move in straight lines. They use standard slip space lanes.
Like marching down a well-paved highway.
Exactly. To make them vanish, humanity didn't meet them in a traditional pitched battle. The implication in the source material is that humanity utilized asymmetric warfare focused on environmental manipulation.
Environmental manipulation, like weaponizing space itself.
Precisely. If you know exactly what route an arrogant imperial fleet is going to take, you don't send ships to fight them. You deploy localized gravity well generators to pull them out of hyperspace into a star.
Oh, wow. Just yank them right into a sun.
Yeah, or you seed a nebula with highly volatile stealth-coated proximity mines that detonate simultaneously, vaporizing the fleet instantly so no debris is left large enough to register on a deep space scan.
And what about the distress signals?
Human electronic warfare units likely flooded the communication frequencies with white noise the millisecond the trap was sprung, preventing any signals from getting out.
Okay, so the Emperor loses 500 ships. He gets annoyed, assumes it was some bizarre anomaly, and sends a second fleet. 2,000 warships this time.
He just scales up the brute force.
Right. And the exact same thing happens. They cross into human space, their telemetry cuts out, and they just cease to exist.
You can imagine the absolute terror that would begin to ripple through the imperial military hierarchy at this point.
Oh, they must be freaking out.
These commanders are aristocrats. They're used to neat statistical victories where they outnumber the enemy 10-1 and take minimal losses.
It's usually just a parade for them.
Exactly. To have 2,500 ships erased from existence without a single combat report implies a level of systemic compromise they literally do not have the training to comprehend.
They're completely flying blind. So the Emperor finally decides to gather some actual intelligence. He dispatches his top spies to infiltrate human data networks and compile a report on what exactly they are dealing with.
And what the spies uncover completely shatters the imperial worldview.
They expected to find a fragile, primitive society, right?
Right, an agrarian culture. Instead, they find the human historical archive. The spies dig into our past and realize that humanity has nearly destroyed itself dozens of times. We survived global pandemics, nuclear standoffs, resource wars.
We fought over ideology, territory, resources, you name it.
And after every single near-extinction event, we didn't just rebuild. We emerged technologically and strategically stronger.
So the spies bring this report back to the Emperor, and it contains a terrifying, definitive conclusion. The lead spy actually states in the report, humans do not fear adversity.
It's a profound realization. The Empire assumed that because humanity was currently peaceful, because they were farming on Colony 117, they were inherently weak.
They mistook a choice for a lack of capability.
Exactly. What the intelligence apparatus realized is that humanity's fractured, war-torn history was an evolutionary crucible. They didn't just passively survive hardship, they synthesized it.
They adapted.
They mastered the mechanics of violence so thoroughly that they became apex predators who simply made a conscious, collective choice to become gardeners.
Apex predators who chose to garden. I absolutely love that framing. But here's where it gets really interesting. The Emperor's hubris becomes his fatal flaw right here.
It really does.
The spy warns him. The spy literally says to his face, humans do not fear adversity. And the Emperor scoffs. He looks down from his throne and says, every species fears adversity.
He can't even process the concept.
Right. And the spy pushes back. risking his own life, and says, "Not like humans." But the Emperor actively dismisses the warning of his own intelligence agency.
This is confirmation bias scaled up to a galactic level.
He's blinding himself.
Completely. When your entire worldview, your entire 50,000-year religion of self is predicated on your own invincibility, any data that contradicts that narrative is treated as a mechanical error.
Or just straight up cowardice on the part of the messenger.
Exactly. The Emperor literally lacks the cognitive pathways to process the idea of a species that thrives when placed at a disadvantage.
And his inability to process that chaos leads us directly to the Battle of the Orion Corridor.
The first real clash.
Yeah, this is the first major visible clash of the war. The Emperor decides to stop playing games. He sends an armada of 50,000 ships. 50,000.
This is a wall of metal.
And humanity fields a defense force of 5,000 ships. It is 10-to-1 odds. The text actually notes that the Imperial officers are literally opening bottles of celebratory wine before the engagement even starts.
Because they ran the math.
Right. They ran the math, and the math says the humans will be wiped out in an hour.
But the math doesn't account for doctrine. The Imperial commanders rely on predictable strategies. They move in massive, rigid formations, just literal walls of ships designed to overwhelm a stationary target.
It's a military tradition that hasn't needed to evolve in millennia.
Because no one has ever fought back.
You know, it's not just that they have bad tactics, it's that their structure prevents them from adapting. It's like a phalanx of Roman legionaries. They're heavily armored, moving in perfect, unstoppable lockstep.
Right, shielding each other.
But their shields only face forward. They're designed to fight another army standing directly in front of them on an open field.
And how did humanity fight them?
Well, humanity didn't line up on the field. They acted like a swarm of drones. The human ships didn't hold formation at all.
Total chaos from the Empire's perspective.
Exactly. The text describes them instantly breaking apart into these chaotic, unpredictable microsquadrons. They use the gravity of nearby celestial bodies to slingshot themselves behind the Imperial lines.
Brilliant.
They hid in the thermal bloom of the Imperial ship's own engines. They even weaponized debris from destroyed ships, accelerating it into the hulls of the Imperial dreadnoughts.
What you are describing is the difference between centralized and decentralized command.
Break that down for us.
Well, the Imperial fleet requires orders to trickle down from the flagship, perhaps even from the Emperor himself. There's a massive communication lag.
So if a captain sees a threat,
If an Imperial captain wants to break formation to chase a human ship, he has to ask permission. And by the time permission is granted, the human ship is long gone.
exactly. The human captains, on the other hand, were empowered to make split-second decisions locally. They're constantly improvising.
Turning every single disadvantage into a lethal opportunity.
It's like a rigid classical orchestra suddenly being forced into a high-speed jazz improvisation battle. The Empire couldn't read the notes because the humans were making them up on the fly.
That is a perfect analogy.
And the result was an absolute slaughter. The source states that 20,000 Imperial ships were destroyed, and the remaining 30,000 broke formation and fled in terror.
5,000 human ships routed an armada of 50,000.
Unbelievable.
Think about the psychological shock of that moment for the Imperial command structure. Their perfect, mathematically flawless tactics were rendered completely obsolete in a matter of hours.
They must have been stunned.
Stunned doesn't cover it. It's not just that they lost 20,000 ships. In an empire of millions of worlds, they can rebuild ships. What they lost was the intellectual high ground.
They realized they didn't know how to fight.
They realized with profound horror that they did not understand the rules of the game they were playing.
The universe stopped obeying their spreadsheet. And this catastrophic defeat at the Orion Corridor finally wakes the Emperor up.
No more laughing?
The laughing stops entirely. He's furious, and he does what tyrants do when they are embarrassed. He escalates. He declares total, absolute war.
He mobilizes millions of ships this time.
Millions. Entire sectors of the galaxy are forcibly converted into military-industrial zones just to churn out more weapons, more armor, more dreadnoughts. He is preparing to drop a hammer of such magnitude that human improvisation won't matter.
He's attempting to reassert the old rules. If 10-to-1 odds failed, he will crush the chaos with 1,000-to-1 odds.
He believes sheer volume can suffocate adaptability.
He thinks he can just drown them.
But as the Empire prepares to launch this unprecedented armada, they are about to hit a brick wall that humanity has been quietly building for centuries.
And this introduces a theme that I find to be one of the most compelling parts of the source text.
What's that?
The tension between human paranoia and human preparedness. It is a very fine line to walk for a society.
It really is. So let's look at the situation. The Emperor mobilizes millions of warships, and his propaganda network broadcasts this fact to the whole galaxy. He wants everyone to watch Earth burn.
He wants to make an example of them.
Right. Now, the expected response from a normal, peaceful species would be sheer panic. You would expect riots in the streets, desperate drafts, or leaders begging the Emperor for terms.
Absolute chaos on the home front.
What does Earth actually do? The human government calmly issues a directive, and they begin activating a defensive network that they have been building in secret for generations.
There is a quote from the source material that perfectly encapsulates this mindset. History taught humans an important lesson. Peace never lasts forever.
That is a profound cultural philosophy.
It is. It's a culturally ingrained pragmatism about the fragility of peace.
It is, but I have to push back hard on the logistics of what the text claims happens next.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because the source reveals that humanity had massive shipyards hidden deep beneath the oceans of Earth. They had automated factories operating inside hollowed-out asteroids in the Kuiper Belt,
Yes, incredible engineering.
and dormant, city-sized orbital weapons platforms disguised as civilian traffic hubs. And they had been building these for hundreds of years.
Right.
How does a civilization keep an industrial project of that magnitude a secret from a galaxy-spanning empire that literally has spies everywhere? The thermal output of an asteroid factory alone would light up an Imperial sensor grid light years away.
Your skepticism is entirely justified, and it points to the genius of human engineering described in the lore.
So how did they do it?
Well, you are right. You cannot hide the thermodynamics of forging starship armor, so humanity didn't hide it. They disguised it.
Disguise it how?
They masked the thermal output of their asteroid factories to mimic natural geothermal venting or solar radiation anomalies. For the ocean shipyards, they utilized the immense pressure and natural thermal layers of the deep sea to scrub the heat signatures before they ever reached the surface.
Okay, so they hid the heat, I'll buy that. But what about the people? How do you keep millions of engineers and workers quiet for generations?
Through intense cultural compartmentation and a shared generational trauma, the peaceful outward demeanor of humanity was the ultimate camouflage.
So the spies just weren't looking in the right places.
Exactly. The Empire spies were looking for military parades. They were looking for massive defense budgets and aggressive rhetoric. They weren't looking deeply at a society of scientists and farmers because imperial doctrine dictated that agrarian societies were harmless.
They saw what they wanted to see.
Furthermore, imagine the discipline required by humanity. You have generations of engineers designing city-sized weapons systems, testing them in simulations, and then quietly putting them into cold storage.
Praying they will never have to be fired.
Yes. The society funded this massive dark budget, yet never once flexed this military muscle to gain leverage in trade disputes or political squabbles.
The level of restraint is staggering. They essentially live a double life as a species. They maintain the garden in the daylight and sharpen the swords in the basement at night.
And the payoff of this multi-generational restraint is devastating because the Emperor doesn't know any of this exists.
Exactly. The Emperor sends his invasion force. It is an armada of 3 million warships. It is a fleet so large it physically blocks out the stars.
An unimaginable scale of violence.
They jump into the Sol system, expecting to easily bombard a defenseless planet. They hit the human defense line, and it is not a battle. The text describes it as an annihilation.
A complete massacre of the Imperial forces.
Thousands of dormant stations suddenly wake up. Those disguised civilian hubs reveal themselves as city-sized railguns.
The trap is sprung.
The hollowed-out asteroids split open, disgorging swarms of heavily armored human dreadnoughts. The first Imperial wave is entirely wiped out in the crossfire. Millions of Imperial troops die in a matter of hours.
The shockwaves this event sent through the Imperial command structure must have been entirely paralyzing.
They couldn't even process it.
Look at the sequence of events. First, at the Orion Corridor, humanity proved they were wildly unpredictable in active tactical combat. Now, they have proven that their long-term strategic patience was entirely invisible to the Empire's gaze.
The Emperor's getting outplayed on every level.
He isn't just fighting an enemy that outmaneuvers him. He is fighting an enemy he literally cannot see or comprehend until the trap is already snapped shut.
It's the ultimate bait and switch. But here is the critical pivot in the narrative. Humanity's hidden weapons successfully stopped the physical fleet. But the human leadership understood something fundamental.
Stopping ships is not enough.
Right. You can destroy 3 million warships, And an empire spanning 1 million worlds will just build 3 million more.
They have the resources to do that indefinitely.
Defeating a 50,000-year-old institution requires more than just military attrition. It requires breaking the very foundation of its authority.
You cannot just defeat the emperor's military. You have to destroy the myth of the empire itself. You have to attack the idea that holds the structure together.
Which brings us to a massive turning point in the conflict: the weaponization of truth.
This is a brilliant shift in strategy.
This is the moment humanity shifts from the hard power of railguns and shipyards to the soft power of information warfare, and it yields devastating kinetic results.
I would argue this is the single most dangerous weapon humanity deploys in the entire conflict.
Let's lay out how it happens. While the main fleets are clashing in space, human special forces are quietly infiltrating what the text calls impossible locations.
Deep behind enemy lines.
Way behind.
Yeah.
One of these teams manages to bypass Imperial security and penetrate deep beneath the crust of the Imperial capital world itself.
Right under the Emperor's nose.
And what they find down there is an ancient, highly classified archive. We are talking about records that are tens of thousands of years old. Records the Emperor deliberately locked away in the dark.
To understand why this is so volatile, we have to look at the foundational myth of the Galactic Empire.
Right. How do they justify their rule?
How does an empire justify its rule to thousands of different species? It usually crafts a narrative of bringing order to chaos, of uniting the stars under a benevolent or at least necessary firm hand.
They sell the idea that the Emperor's rule prevents anarchy.
Yes. But the truth the Special Forces team uncovers in the archive is horrifying. The empire wasn't built on unity or trade or cooperation.
He was built on blood.
It was built on systemic industrial-scale extermination. The records detail thousands of species that were entirely erased from existence.
Just wiped out completely.
Countless vibrant civilizations destroyed, their planets glassed, and their histories completely wiped from the galactic record, just to maintain the illusion that the Emperor had a natural, divine right to rule.
This raises an incredibly important question about the inherent fragility of any power system built on suppressed history, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The Emperor's rule was maintained by this grand, glittering illusion of an inevitable, monolithic authority. But beneath that surface, it was a hollow structure desperately trying to hold back an ocean of historical trauma.
But I want to ask you, why keep the records at all? If the Emperor went through the trouble of wiping out thousands of species and erasing them from public memory, why keep the receipts?
It seems counterintuitive, doesn't it?
Yeah, why not just burn the archive and ensure the secret dies forever?
Because a tyrant's sense of power is deeply intrinsically tied to his conquests. To a narcissistic dictator who views himself as a god, destroying the records of his victories means deleting the proof of his own godhood.
Oh, wow. So he needs to know they existed so we can know he beat them.
He kept those archives to preserve his ego. He needed to be able to go down into the dark and look at the ledger of his atrocities to validate his own supremacy.
His hubris preserved the exact instrument of his destruction. That's poetic justice.
It really is.
So the human operatives secure this data. And what humanity does next is brilliant. They don't blackmail the Emperor with it.
No, they don't ask for a ransom.
They don't demand a ceasefire in exchange for keeping the secret. They don't even selectively edit it for propaganda.
They just let the truth do the work.
They simply upload the unvarnished truth to the Empire's own faster-than-light communication network. They broadcast it to every single screen, every single terminal, on millions of worlds simultaneously.
The shift from hard power to soft power here is a masterclass in psychological warfare. The truth was far more devastating than any physical bomb because it instantly dismantled the psychological infrastructure of the Empire.
The text describes the result as immediate and catastrophic.
The whole galaxy just erupts.
Across the galaxy, rebellions ignite. Species that had loyally served the Empire for centuries, species that provided the raw materials for the Emperor's warships, suddenly down their tools and rise up.
They turn on their overseers.
Even former Imperial military units defect and join humanity. The Emperor suddenly finds enemies springing up in every corner of his own house.
And we have to analyze the paradox of the Emperor's reaction to this uprising. His instinct, forged over 50 millennia, is to double down on the only tool he truly understands: cruelty.
He just starts glassing planets again.
He orders planetary bombardments against his own rebelling citizens. He destroys cities. He causes billions to suffer in an attempt to crush the insubordination.
But the dynamic of power has fundamentally shifted beneath his feet.
Completely shifted.
Right, because the text points out that his cruelty stops working. Every single act of violent reprisal only strengthens the resistance.
It acts like an accelerant.
The harder he squeezes his rebelling sectors, the more control he loses. Terror, which has been his primary currency for 50,000 years, suffers from hyperinflation. It becomes worthless. Why does it stop working?
Because terror relies absolutely on isolation. When a planet thinks it is alone against the vast might of the Empire, it obeys out of fear. It self-polices.
Because they think no one will help them.
Right. But when humanity bypassed the imperial firewalls and broadcast the truth, they shattered that isolation. They showed the entire galaxy that they shared a common trauma, a common enemy, and most importantly, a common capability to resist.
They weren't alone anymore.
When the Emperor drops bombs on a rebelling planet now, he isn't inspiring fear. He is just validating the truth of the archives. He is proving humanity right on a galactic stage.
He is clutching water. The tighter he clenches his fist, the faster it slips through his fingers.
That's exactly what's happening.
So now, the Emperor is truly cornered. He is stripped of his invincible fleets. He is bleeding allies by the day as his economy collapses. He is completely stripped of his narrative authority.
He has nothing left but rage.
And a cornered tyrant with a god complex resorts to the unthinkable. This leads us directly to an event the source material refers to as the Starbreaker incident.
This is the climax of the technological and philosophical war. It is the ultimate test of the two competing ideologies we've discussed.
Exactly. In a desperate, final, apocalyptic move, the Emperor authorizes the deployment of his ultimate weapon.
And it is a terrifying piece of technology.
It is a massive platform literally called the Starbreaker. And it is designed to do exactly what it sounds like. It destabilizes the fusion reaction of a star, causing it to go supernova and annihilate the entire solar system around it.
He's going to blow up the sun.
The Emperor aims this weapon directly at Earth's sun, and the text notes that even humanity is deeply concerned here.
As they should be.
Right. If Earth falls, the central pillar of the galactic resistance collapses, and the rebellions might fracture.
Let's contrast the core philosophies behind the technologies at play in this moment, though. The Empire, a civilization built on a foundation of extermination, fear, and erased history, reaches its absolute technological pinnacle by creating an instrument of absolute destruction.
A machine whose only purpose is to kill stars.
A machine that ends life on a solar scale. It is the ultimate, final manifestation of obey or die.
And humanity. A species that spent centuries quietly building asteroid factories in the dark just to protect its farmers.
Right. What did they bring to the table?
They have spent generations perfecting something entirely different. They didn't build a better Starbreaker. They built a planetary shield.
An instrument of absolute protection.
So the fleet carrying the Starbreaker arrives in the Sol system. The Emperor is watching a live feed from his throne room. He gives the order.
This is the moment of truth.
The Starbreaker fires its beam. The Emperor is literally smiling, waiting for the end of humanity, waiting for the sun to detonate and wipe the slate clean.
And
nothing happens.
the shield holds.
The shield completely holds. It absorbs a blast meant to trigger a supernova. And I want to get to the metaphor right here, because earlier I thought about a wrecking ball hitting a pane of glass, but that doesn't make sense. A wrecking ball would just shatter glass.
No, it wouldn't work like that.
So how do we visualize the scale of this technological triumph?
Think of it in terms of thermodynamics and kinetic energy. It is like firing a high-velocity, armor-piercing bullet directly into a massive, unimaginably deep body of water.
Okay, I see where you're going.
The bullet is designed to destroy solid matter, to shatter bone and metal. But when it hits the water doesn't break. The water simply absorbs the kinetic energy, dissipates it in a million different directions, and slows the bullet down until it harmlessly sinks to the bottom.
That is amazing.
The planetary shield was a thermodynamic breakwater that simply drank the energy of the Starbreaker.
That is exactly it. The weapon didn't fail to fire. The target was just fundamentally superior to the weapon.
And the psychological devastation of this moment on the Imperial forces cannot be overstated.
You have Imperial scientists on the command ships actively panicking. They're looking at their sensors and literally saying, impossible. No shield can survive that.
What you are seeing is an epistemological collapse.
Epistemological collapse. Explain that. Their understanding of reality just broke.
Yes. Epistemology is the study of knowledge, how we know what we know. The Imperial scientists have based their entire understanding of physics, of energy limits, and of material science on the assumption that their technology is the absolute pinnacle of what is possible in the universe.
So when it fails, their whole worldview shatters.
Exactly. What does it do to the psyche of a galactic dictator when the fundamental laws of physics, as his top minds understand them, are casually rewritten by a species he thought was pathetic?
It destroys him.
His ultimate expression of power is entirely negated by human engineering.
It proves that the Emperor's power has a mathematical limit, and humanity's resilience has exceeded that limit. And because the Empire broadcasts this engagement, hoping to show the galaxy the death of Earth, everyone witnessed the failure.
The whole galaxy saw the Emperor bleed.
The Imperial military morale completely shatters in real time. The soldiers realize they have absolutely nothing left in the arsenal. The myth of the Emperor dies right there before his physical body is even threatened.
Which means the Earth's shield holding wasn't just a successful defensive maneuver, it was the starting gun for the final act.
It's the march on the throne world. This brings us to the final section of our outline, the ultimate subversion.
The culmination of everything.
And this is where the narrative, in my opinion, elevates from a great sci-fi military story to a profound, enduring philosophical statement.
It is the moment that redefines the galaxy.
Weeks after the Starbreaker fails, humanity launches its massive counterattack. But they don't do what the Empire did. They don't engage in scorched earth tactics.
They show restraint.
They don't attack civilian worlds. They don't burn agricultural colonies out of spite. They go straight for the throat.
Yeah.
A massive, unified human fleet, accompanied by ships from dozens of newly freed alien species, emerges directly above the Imperial capital.
Right to the Emperor's doorstep.
For the first time in 50,000 years, enemy ships have breached the atmosphere of the throne world. The final battle lasts for 3 grueling days. Fleets fall, orbital fortresses collapse, until only the Emperor's grand palace remains standing.
The Emperor is sitting in his ruined throne room. The walls are crumbling, the fires are burning outside, and he is waiting for what he assumes is the inevitable, historically mandated conclusion to this type of event.
Right. A human commander, covered in the dust of the battle, approaches him. And the Emperor looks up, stripped of all his fleets and his power, and asks a very simple, resigned question: will you kill me?
Because, to his mind, conquerors always seek revenge.
His entire 50,000-year history proves that power transitions are bathed in blood.
He expects the humans to act exactly like him. He expects the cycle of violence to continue seamlessly. In his mind, a new power violently deposes the old power, executes the old ruler to legitimize their claim, and then takes a seat on the exact same throne to begin ruling.
But the human commander considers the question, looks at the broken tyrant, and just shakes his head. No.
The Emperor is genuinely confused.
He asks, no. And the commander delivers the most devastating blow of the entire multi-year war. He looks around the opulent ruined palace, looks back at the Emperor, and says, you wanted us to become monsters. We refuse.
We need to really break down the profound sociological and philosophical victory embedded in that interaction.
This is so powerful.
By sparing the Emperor's life, humanity actively denies him the martyrdom of a conquered king. But far more importantly, by refusing to assume the throne, they break a 50,000-year cycle of institutionalized oppression.
They arrest him. They arrange for him to stand trial. They officially dissolve the Galactic Empire. Thousands of independent worlds instantly regain their sovereignty.
And humanity just walks away from absolute power.
They have the largest fleet in the galaxy. They have the moral high ground. They could easily declare themselves the new rulers.
But they refuse to become a new empire.
Instead, they use their engineering prowess to help heal the galaxy, to rebuild the communication networks, to restore the environments of the worlds the Emperor burned.
The text notes an incredible detail here, though. The rest of the galaxy couldn't understand it at first. They fully expected a new boss.
That's so sad when you think about it.
It is, and that highlights a tragic reality about institutionalized oppression that we see even in our own human history. The oppressed often internalize the system of the oppressor.
They were used to the leash.
The galaxy had been conditioned to assume that someone, somewhere, always had to be in charge. Instead, humanity handed them the terrifying, heavy responsibility of self-determination and freedom.
The Emperor was finally truly defeated, not when his palace walls were breached by railgun fire, but when his entire worldview was proven objectively, undeniably wrong by that human commander's mercy.
His whole philosophy crumbled.
The Emperor's whole philosophy, His entire justification for his atrocities was based on the cynical idea that power only exists to dominate others. By holding absolute, unquestioned power and actively choosing not to dominate, humanity rendered the emperor's entire 50,000-year existence philosophically meaningless.
The final thesis of the source text is beautifully summarized in an epilogue by a historian reflecting on the war centuries later.
Ooh, I remember this part. A student asks a question. Right.
Yes, a student asks the historian why humanity didn't take control when they had the chance. The historian answers, because the goal was never power. The goal was to make sure nobody could ever threaten freedom again.
Wow.
Humanity's greatest strength during this entire conflict wasn't its hidden fleets, its unpredictable tactics, or its invincible planetary shields. Its greatest weapon was its absolute refusal to surrender its humanity.
It refused to let the trauma of a galactic war turn it into the very monster it was fighting to destroy.
Exactly.
It is an incredible, sprawling journey. Just to pull all these complex threads together for you as we close out this analysis, we started with a peaceful frontier colony, completely dismissed and violently victimized by an arrogant ancient empire.
A terrible mistake on the Emperor's part.
We watched humanity weaponize their unpredictable nature, leaning heavily into their messy, chaotic evolutionary history to completely outmaneuver rigid, mathematically perfect imperial doctrine.
The ultimate underdog story.
We uncovered a secret, generation-spanning defense initiative that proved a very difficult truth. Maintaining peace requires deep, quiet, and sometimes paranoid vigilance.
Asteroids filled with dreadnoughts.
We saw the raw, kinetic power of weaponized truth completely shatter the illusion of imperial authority. And finally, we saw moral fortitude triumph over absolute power, breaking a cycle of tyranny that had suffocated the stars for 500 centuries.
It really underscores a timeless lesson.
Mm.
True defiance isn't just about winning the war, it's about making sure you do not lose yourself in the process of winning.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought.
Something to ponder.
Something for you to mull over that builds on everything we've unpacked today, and maybe connects it